Welcome to the Life After Sugar podcast. The podcast that's not just about sugar, but about your relationship with it and also with food and especially with yourself. So if you want to discover your life after sugar and hear inspiring stories from all kinds of people who also cut out sugar in their way, at their pace, for their own reasons, this is the podcast for you. Because when you take away the sugar, you can finally discover the real sweetness in your life. I'm your host, Netta Gorman. And on this week's episode, my guest is Jen, who grew up living on highly processed and sugary foods, and in her 20s, she lived on coffee and Diet Mountain Dew and convenience foods. And she was like dragging herself through the day, and what changed her way of living and her way of eating was her mother's health. And that's the story that Jen tells in this episode. We'll get to our chat in just a minute. But first, I just wanted to tell you that if you're looking for some free resources, then I have plenty for you. First, download my 5 tips to get rid of cravings. And those 5 tips may not be what you think they are. So go to aftersugarclub.com and download your 5 tips today. And while you're at aftersugarclub.com, why not take the cravings quiz? I created this cravings quiz specifically to help you start thinking more deeply about what triggers your cravings. And when you do this quiz, you'll get your personalized score as well as my practical tips to help you take your first step to get rid of cravings. Those free resources are at aftersugarclub.com. And also, come check out the Life After Sugar Facebook page and subscribe to the Life After Sugar YouTube channel, as well as my Instagram account at My Life After Sugar, which is where you'll get all kinds of inspiration, so that you can see that it's perfectly possible to live a happy and active life, even if you don't eat sugar. You can also check out my TikTok account at Netta_lifeaftersugar. All right, here's my chat with Jen. Okay, so I'm here today with Jen. And Jen, can you tell us a little bit about your background, how you grew up with food, especially with sugar?
Yeah, so I grew up in the Midwest. I grew up in Minnesota, and typical Midwest 80s kid. We did lots of Hamburger Helper and TV dinner, freezer food kind of things. My mom had multiple sclerosis, and so she ran the books for my dad's business. I had 2 brothers, and she took care of us, and then dealt with MS our entire life, I should say. And so when I was in my 20s, I was living on fast food and sugar and Diet Mountain Dew and half a pot of coffee. And, I didn't know anything about nutrition. I shouldn't say that. We had rules in our house. Like, we couldn't buy a cereal if sugar was in the first 3 ingredients.
Oh, okay.
But we could have a bowl of sugar on the table, and we could have 1 or 2 teaspoons.
Yeah.
Which ironically is actually still less sugar than what's in most kids' cereals today.
Probably. Yeah.
So,
yeah. So what were those rules based on? Did your mom know that sugar wasn't good for you, or where did it come from?
Great question. I think that I think that she had minimal awareness, but we were not a health food family by any stretch of the imagination. We ate Wonder Bread and had Hostess cupcakes and Twinkies for snacks, and but I mean, we had some healthy habits, at least in my teens. Like, I would eat, cheddar cheese and an apple for a snack, and so we had some basic fundamental pieces. But that I think all kind of went out the window when I went on my own. Because I attempted to cook dinner for 2 different boyfriends, one at 18 and one at 19. And I swore off cooking at 19 as a result of those 2 attempts.
Oops.
And didn't start cooking really until probably close to 30, or maybe even after 30. Other than that, it was lean cuisines and, carbs. And I mean, I could make pasta. I could maybe scramble an egg, but I can't say I did a whole lot of that. A lot of, microwave and fast food and things like that in my 20s. Lots of
Wow.
sugar,
So,
lots of caffeine.
yeah. So living in the United States, you could get away with not knowing how to cook, and I would say by association, not really knowing what real foods are until the age
Mhm.
of 30-ish.
Probably.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
So this was in the 80s and 90s?
Yeah. So, I mean, I really got my wake up call probably mid 20s. And that was right around 2000, 2001, somewhere in there. Outside of that, though, I mean, yeah. So my parents divorced when I was 13, and my dad took custody, and my dad also traveled for work. So it was like I was put in charge of the grocery money as the middle kid at 14. Um, which is probably still not a great choice. And it may also be why I wanted nothing to do with cooking, because if I had to do any of it when we were younger, there's that.
Hmm.
But yeah, I mean, we never, my mom didn't have the energy to do a whole lot of like fresh homegrown cooking and
Yeah.
stuff like that. So we ate a lot of, hamburger helper, and like a lot of hamburger helper in any version of whatever tuna helper you could find. Yeah.
Can you
And so
explain to the non-American listeners what hamburger helper is?
Oh, sure. So you get a box, and you buy a pound of ground beef, and then you get this box of hamburger helper. And in the box there is pasta. There might be some dehydrated peas if you choose that one. There's also a chicken helper, which is probably more of the peas. But then it was like a pasta. And then you'd have like taco meat or a seasoning, like taco seasoning or Italian seasoning or something like that. So it was basically noodles and meat with a bunch of seasonings in it, which probably had a bunch of preservatives and everything else in it, looking back on
Okay.
it. But
Yeah.
it was it was a complete meal in a box, sort of.
Well, without the meat.
Right, right. But everything
Without the
else. So you just,
nutrition.
just add meat. It's like, think about like baking a cake where just add your egg and the oil or milk. The same thing. It's like a box mix, and then you just add the beef to it, or the chicken, or tuna.
Yeah, got it. Okay. That doesn't exist in England, by the way. Not that I knew of, at least. And
Probably not. Most of the food like substances in America don't exist in England either. But yeah.
well, yeah, at least in the 80s and 90s. Although I have to say, I don't know exactly what existed in England because you only know what you eat at home, really.
Fair.
Yeah. So, what happened in your mid-20s that changed things?
It was one of those what I call a 2x4 moment, where you get hit upside the head and everything changed in a moment. My mom had multiple sclerosis since I was an infant. And at the age of 49, she started suffering some relapses. And she was on all the preventative medications to make sure that those didn't happen. But she had a relapse, and they put her in the hospital and pumped her full of steroids, and they didn't take. Normally, if a couple times she had those, they would give her the steroids and she'd be 90% better. But this time it didn't happen. And so over the course of a 6-week period of time, she just continued to lose strength. And the hospital couldn't keep her anymore. They sent her home, and she fell out of her wheelchair and got trapped underneath it in the bathroom. And the fire
Oh.
department had to break in and rescue her. And at that time, my brother and I looked at each other. We go, we have to do something. She can't stay here anymore. It's not safe. And, within a few days, we're packing up her apartment and moving her into a nursing home. I mean, I was 20, 25, 26 at the time, maybe 25. And, I just remember standing in her living room, Netta, watching her cling to every one of her possessions. We'd hold something up and like, what do you want to do with this? Because we had a box for Goodwill, a box for storage, a box for the nursing home, and then one for trash. And she's like, oh, I want to take that with. But mom, you can't take everything. I know, but I need that. Mom, it's a 1970s concert t-shirt. I know, but or it was like the ashtray my brother made in the 3rd grade. But she had to just give up so much of the life that she had curated, and watching her give up not just her things, but her independence and her freedom.
Yeah.
Like, it was such a wake-up call for me, because in that moment, it wasn't just about my mom, but I also started thinking about myself, because my mom had MS. her sister had MS, and so did their mom.
Hmm.
And I don't know that it ever dawned on me before that moment of like, oh, this could be my path too. And in that moment, I was like, I will do whatever I can to help my mom and take care of myself. So I started looking for ways to be able to help her. And I mean, in that moment, I'm like, well, obviously the doctors don't know what they're doing and the drugs don't work. So what else is there? And I kind of went on a journey of research and exploration to be able to see what I could do to help them. Help
Wow.
us.
And that was to help your mum, but also to prevent you from that kind of
Yeah.
result.
Yeah.
And what came
Yeah,
of
it was,
that?
I mean, it was crazy. And, so within a little while, I found myself at a conference, and it was being presented by this pharmacist who was teaching about the healing benefits of superfoods.
Hmm.
And in the late 90s, early 2000s, that was bizarre. I mean, no, multivitamins were still weird at that time, let alone superfoods. And during his talk, he was talking about his wife who had had MS, multiple sclerosis, the same amount of time as my mom. After his workshop that day, his session that day, at the reception that evening, I see the two of them literally waltzing across the ballroom, and she's untouched. And I got a chance to meet her. I'm like, what drugs are you on? Because your results are so much better than my mom. She needs to be on whatever you're on.
Yeah.
And she looked at me kind of confused for a second. She goes, I'm not on any medications.
Hmm.
Why? And she goes, well, my husband didn't believe in them. What?
Yeah.
Your husband, the pharmacist, didn't believe in the drugs. And she goes, no, the population studies were too short and too small, and the side effects basically outweighed the benefits.
Hmm.
Oh, okay. So what did you do? And she goes, I just built my body up with diet, supplements, and exercise. And then I started thinking about my mom's lifestyle. And I mean, I told you what we ate. And, she tried supplements for 6 months when I was in sixth grade. And she's like, those are too expensive. They don't work. I'm not doing them.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't remember her ever exercising at all, unless maybe she had a little bit of physical therapy here and there over the course of my lifetime, but it wasn't anything significant or consistent.
Yeah.
So it got me thinking, like, what if my mom had done what this woman had done? Would her results be different? And so I started researching, nutrition and lifestyle changes and things like that. And the more I dug at it, the more I saw people reversing MS and heart disease and cancer and diabetes and fibromyalgia and Alzheimer's, like all of these diseases that I thought was a life sentence once you get the diagnosis, people were reversing them by changing their diet and lifestyle. And
Wow.
that's actually what prompted me to go back to school for nutrition. Within a few years, we were able to get my mom out of the nursing home and into a group home. And because we could have influence over her diet and supplements and things like that, we started making changes. And she ended up passing just before her 65th. But the doctors and nurses that took care of her said that we extended her life by at least 5, if not 10 years, and tremendously improved the quality of life that she had while she was living.
Amazing. Amazing. Because it's not just to live longer, it's the quality of life. And how did her life improve in those last 10 years or so?
Well, she was really struggling with infections. I mean, when she was in the nursing home, she was having a UTI every other month. And when we got her out of that environment and started really impacting her nutrition, it went to one every other year and then none. She reclaimed some of her bowel movement, her cognition improved. She didn't fully regain use of her body because she had really, really gone downhill very, very fast. But the quality of her life, her cognition, and just, not having to fight off infections every single time just really played a significant role in her overall well-being and vitality.
And she was open to making those changes?
Open is an interesting word. I kind of did it without her knowing, because when I suggested she do it, she's like, I'm not taking it. I've already done that, and wasn't really open to it. And there's one product that I use, and I still use today, called Genesis. And it is high in antioxidants, and it's a superfood blend. And it really is a whole food supplement, but it's liquid and it tastes like juicy juice. So I had the nurses and the aides just start slipping it to her in her cranberry juice. And I still remember the day she got it, and she's like, they changed my cranberry juice. This tastes
Oh.
different. I was like, really?
Hmm.
Huh, interesting. And I said nothing. And she was on that for probably about a year and a half before she knew she was,
Okay.
maybe a year. But I'll never forget. She calls me up one day. She's like, "What is this stuff you're sending me?" And I'm like, "Mom, it's the same stuff you've been taking for the last year and a half since you've been in the group home." And she's like, "I'm not taking this." And I go, "Oh, do you remember a while back when you said your cranberry juice changed?" Yeah, that's why. And do you remember how your UTIs went down and your immune system built up and you had more energy and you felt better? Yeah, well, that's why. That and, dietary changes and stuff like that. And she's like, oh, okay. From that point forward, she was open
Huh.
because she knew it worked. She knew the difference that it made. And so then she was on omegas and she was on a multi. And so I was able to really bolster, and we did vitamin D and things like that. But I had to start her in kind of a sneaky way where she didn't know that she was taking it. But I think about kids the same way, right? When our kids are in this exposure and we have to, like, at least a lot of kids, we have to sneak in the vegetables
Yeah.
to the pasta sauce or to hide them in other things because there's a stigma in their mind or they don't like the bitterness about vegetables, things like that. So I kind of did the same thing with my mom, but over time she really became open and embracing of it.
Yeah. Wow. That's amazing. I want to take a quick break to say that if this is your first time here, then welcome and thank you for listening to this podcast. And whether you're new or a regular and you haven't yet rated or reviewed this podcast, could I ask you to scroll down and tap on the stars to rate this podcast and also to write a short review to let me know how this podcast is helping you in your life after sugar. I love reading your reviews, and when you rate and review this podcast, not only does it encourage me to continue making new episodes, but it also helps to share this podcast and have more people see it so that we can help more people feel better and lose weight with less sugar. So again, thank you for rating and reviewing this podcast and for spreading the word about sugar. And this antioxidant, was that you were saying it's also with the dietary changes, and I just sort of want to zoom in on the sugar, which,
Yeah.
is one of the worst things for
Yes.
inflammation and, for
Yeah.
oxidation. So what kinds of dietary changes did you also make with her?
Yeah. Well, one of the biggest pieces was fresh food. In a nursing home, everything comes out of a can or frozen or mass produced. I mean, it shows up that way, and then they just warm it up essentially. So having fresh fruits and vegetables and adding more nutrition into her day, and it crowded out a lot of the other stuff, right? She has always had a sweet tooth, and so she would have a little bit of chocolate, but she would have like a piece of chocolate versus, the desserts and things like that they serve in the nursing home. So she really had a much better quality of food and much less sugar. I mean, when she was in the nursing home at one point, Netta, they were feeding her like 2 packets of that brown sugar and cinnamon oatmeal in the morning.
Yeah.
And then she would have a bowl of yogurt with fruit for lunch.
And it wasn't plain yogurt, I'm sure.
No, but I'm talking like a cup and a half, maybe 2 cups, and then they would add more fruit on top of it. So, 20 to 40 grams of sugar in one meal. And then for dinner, it would be, whether it was bread or stuffing or rice, I mean, some other very heavy carb laden meal with a little bit of protein and some canned peas or, I mean, like just, ugh.
Mm-hmm. Variation on the hamburger helper.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. But not one that anyone would choose to eat, I don't think.
Yeah, not a better variation.
No.
So, yeah, it feels like from the outside listening to this that actually having her in a nursing home or care home, actually, if you hadn't been involved, would have made things worse. Is that unfair of me to think that?
No, it did significantly. I mean, and what's crazy is that because of her MS and the lack of strength and stuff like that, she was already not eating great food in the first place. You know, she was doing Meals on Wheels for a little while, which in the States, we have this, I don't know if it's anywhere else, but it's an organization that brings over essentially TV dinners, right? They're pre-made, low, pre-made meals for low income elderly. And so she was living on those and then TV dinners for a lot. And then she would eat fruit and cottage cheese and that kind of thing. But because the nursing home is more processed and there's more availability of sweets, because they have to provide some kind of, you know, yogurt or gelatin or, you know, cake or cheesecake or pudding or whatever, you know, at every meal, like, or at least, you know, lunch and dinner. I mean, there was just so much exposure to it. And so the group home allowed her to be able to have better quality meals that were balanced, that we had influence over nutrition wise. And then she just snuck her little treats here and there, but they were little, you know, versus a big dessert at every meal.
Yeah. I mean, you were lucky that you could have any kind of influence.
Yeah.
And
I'm
she
so
was
grateful
lucky.
for it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And she was the luckiest one. So how did this affect your own quest for your own health?
I will say it was a journey. I started very small. I still remember like when I was learning about health and things like that, it was not a total 180 for me. I mean, I was so ingrained in not cooking. And I mean, I would wake up in the morning and have a half a pot of coffee and a bagel or a piece of toast or cereal. Lunch was usually like Wendy's, where it was a junior bacon cheeseburger, a small fry, and a small frosty, which is like a little milkshake.
Hmm.
And then dinner was either a TV dinner, pasta, out with the girls, or who knows. But snacks were Twizzlers, Skittles, and Snickers.
Yeah.
And then I would drink Diet Mountain Dew all day.
Whew.
And yeah, like, I mean, I look back at that and I'm like, wow, crazy. So my first changes were drinking more water. Actually, I think my first change was quitting smoking because I smoked a half pack a day too.
Okay.
But water was huge. And then and so by drinking water first thing in the morning, I was crowding out the coffee. And then it was a matter, I would do a green smoothie instead of the carbs in the morning. And I would use protein powder and it was low glycemic, which now I know. At the time I didn't, berries and greens and stuff like that. And then it was a matter of like, I would order a small Caesar salad instead of the fries at lunch. Like it was baby steps, right?
Yeah.
And so I think back over the years of all of the small incremental changes that I made, one of the things that it really gives me a ton of value with my clients is because I've been there. Like I lived all the changes. I know the most strategic ones and how to make it easier because I can look back and see what were the easiest changes for me. And a huge part of that is adding in more protein. It's crowding out the stuff that doesn't serve us versus cutting it out. Because trying to go cold turkey on sugar, whew, you have to have some significant willpower to make that one happen. But there's lots of ways that we can be able to change our habits to make it easier.
Yeah, yeah. Actually, I did. Now we're recording this in April, and I did a whole podcast episode about willpower and how it's not about willpower or not necessary to have any willpower. But, I'm an example of someone who cut it out completely all at once, cold turkey, but not because I wanted to.
Yeah.
Just because
sometimes we're forced to do that.
Well, yeah, I was forced to do it and it kind of fits my personality, but believe me, there was no willpower involved whatsoever and a lot of resistance. So I understand, that it's not a 180. We don't embrace this type of change with open arms. In fact, we probably go towards it kicking and screaming, as I'm sure you did.
Yeah. And I think one of the biggest things that I've learned is that when we start to really look at what are we creating and why are we doing it? When we have a big enough why, I mean, for me, it was, I don't want to end up in a nursing home, but that still wasn't enough for me to really do a 180. It was a motivator, but I had to really understand what sugar was doing to me and the damage that it was creating, and not just my waistline, but really like overall how my body is functioning and the amount of inflammation I was dealing with and how it feeds, the bad bacteria and so many things. And so for my personality, for me, it was learning a lot of those pieces and then making a decision of what I really was committed to creating versus just giving up sugar.
Yes.
Because every time I had tried to give up sugar before, as soon as I said, I'm okay, starting Monday, no more sugar, my brain would go, but I want, I have it. And the cravings were so intense, I would just quit. So it was a matter of really looking at how do I cut it? How do I crowd it out versus cutting it out?
Very wise. Yes, totally. Yes. And I remember lots of times in my 30s saying, okay, I'm gonna stop chocolate. And then, like on Monday. And then by Tuesday, I was eating 2 bars instead of one of, it was like,
Yes.
yeah. And
Yeah.
so, as you say, it's not just a question of changing what you eat, it's knowing why you're doing it. So, and it's not just a question of intellectual knowing. You had a real concrete, practical reason for wanting to change your diet, which was not to end up like your mom, or at least, reduce that risk as much as possible. And so, were you also being tested like by the regular medical establishment for MS? Like, is it something that,
Mm-mm.
no?
No. Well, because MS is more of an exclusion of symptoms, at least at that time. But I mean, to this date, I'm 51 now, and I've still never. Well, I will be next month, but I still have never been tested for MS.
Okay.
Um,
So it's not hereditary.
so they say, but I don't know. If you look at my family,
Yeah.
there's some significant pool there that if it's not hereditary, then there is a lot of correlation or similarities in how they lived.
Yeah. Yeah. And the fact that your mum got so much better when she changed her diet, that, you've got to wonder.
Mm-hmm. Well, and it's really interesting too. So it's my mom is the oldest of seven, and it's her youngest sister that has MS. So there's five kids in the middle that weren't affected by it at all.
Hmm.
But my mom and her youngest sister both were.
Yeah,
So it's just interesting.
it is. It is. And of course, it's kind of normal to want to not suffer at such a young age yourself. And have you
Yeah.
found that changing your own diet has made a difference in your life? I'm sure it
Oh
has.
my gosh. Yes. I mean, I think about, I mean, I look at a lot of people that are my age, and a lot of people my age look like they are 10 years older than our age. And I was at the doctor's office with my daughter the other day for a checkup, and she's like, "Can I piggyback?" My daughter's 9; she weighs 70 pounds, and I was like, "I don't know." And it's been a little while since we've that level of activity, and it wasn't easy a couple of years ago. But I've been working out for the last 18 months or so, and so I said, "Oh, sure." So she doesn't get on my back; she gets on my shoulders,
Oh,
and I was like, "Oh." And I actually felt pretty strong with her on my shoulder. So I decided, well, like, how strong am I? So I started playing and doing squats. And I did like 10 squats with 70 pounds on my shoulders. I was floored.
wow.
But I think back to my 20s, and like my 20s, I was so dragging through the day. Even when I was working out, I didn't have energy. I didn't really have strength because I was so depleted all the time. And my energy was constantly up and down, which is why I was always looking for my next fix. So today at 50 plus years old, I feel stronger and more vitality. My menopausal journey lasted about 2.5 weeks of hot flashes,
Huh.
and that was it. And I mean, so I know how much of an impact my dietary changes, my lifestyle has had. I don't get sick when most other people get sick. If I do, I'm over it in a day or two versus being laid out for months and months. So I know how much of a difference that made for me because I'm twice as old, and I feel so much better than I did in my 20s.
Fantastic. Yeah. And you'd think, because we're told that sugar gives you energy, which is not 100% false, but not 100% true either. You'd think that all through your 20s, you're consuming lots of sugar. How come you didn't have energy? I mean, we know that now.
Right. I just was I can't say I didn't have energy, but I was always looking for the next fix.
Yes.
My energy was fleeting, right? I would have energy and then I would crash, and I would get more energy and I'd crash. And all day long I was just looking for that next fix that was going to get me through the day. And today I wake up in the morning and I feel like I'm on what I would consider a sugar high from back then. And I live on that pretty much all day now.
Yeah.
And so I get to have amazing energy because I start my day with fuel, real fuel, and it continues to provide that energy throughout the course of the day with no dips and no drops and things like that.
Yeah, stable energy. And what is the type of breakfast that you eat if it's not like sugar, if it's not cereal without sugar in the first three ingredients?
Yeah. Let's see. This morning I had asparagus and peppers and some arugula that I sauteed and then added 4 eggs to it. And so I made up just a beautiful little omelet and had that with a nice glass of water. And
Mm.
I mean, it's pretty typical. It's usually eggs of some sort and veggies because the fiber gives me fuel, right? It's my carbohydrate without annihilating my blood sugar levels. And the protein gives me good stability and helps me to stay grounded and satisfied. And so it's just a beautiful breakfast. And sometimes I'll add in some avocado or, some goat cheese or something like that to it, but
Yum.
just have a really good balance. And sometimes I'll do a smoothie or, like a veggie hash, if you will. And I'll chop a bunch of veggies up that are more, root veggies and cruciferous, broccoli
Yeah.
and cauliflower and Brussels sprouts and stuff like that.
Wow. And what do you feed your daughter in the morning?
Let's see. She this morning had a protein shake and she had some lemon chia seed pancakes that are gluten-free and low glycemic. So she loves them. They're a super easy thing to be able to have a 9-year-old eat, but there's nourishment in them, and then with some blueberries.
Wow, fantastic. Yeah, so you
Yeah.
are giving all these nutritious foods to your child, and she's open to that as well. She doesn't mind not having the cereal.
Yeah. In fact, there's a box of cereal that's in there, and most days she doesn't want it. She would rather have something that is more whole food based. And it's interesting because so her dad and I divorced a few years ago. And so she has polar opposite families.
Hmm.
She has mine, which is very health driven, and she has a lot of fast food and convenience foods at her dad's house. And so there was probably a good year and a half, maybe, where she was resistant to doing as many vegetables. And for me, it was just the consistency. And it's the consistency of like, this is just what we eat. And I mean, she still eats broccoli with ketchup on it, which, okay. She's eating broccoli. And the beautiful thing about that, and I teach my clients this too, it's like, if your kids are resistant to eating vegetables, let them doctor it up however they want. Because what we're doing is building the habit of the vegetable. And they'll at one point in time give up the ketchup. She will not, when she's dating, she's not going to go out to dinner with a boy and put ketchup on her broccoli. She
And
might, she might. I mean, she's pretty independent. She might, but I'm going to guess she's going to grow out of that habit.
it's
So it's how do we
possible.
instill the basis?
Yeah, yeah. And I remember I used to make like cheese sauce, or, I used to like grate cheese and put it under
Mm-hmm.
the broiler for my kid. And she was always like, Mom, everything's better when it's got cheese on it.
Yep. Yeah, and it's just how do you instill the habit, and so that way they're open to it. And one of the things that many people, I think many parents get frustrated with is their kids won't eat the vegetables
Mm.
without understanding that we need to see a new food 7 to 15 times before we accept it as a food that we'll eat. And if we keep giving them boiled carrots or steamed Brussels sprouts as the vegetable, you're probably going to get some resistance. But
Yeah.
if you let them have some control, or you put cheese on it, or you add flavors and olive oil, and you make it taste good and exciting, and also give it to them multiple times, your chances of getting buy-in is so much better.
And it's amazing because your story goes from your mom and possibly her mom as well, with MS and all the struggles of that, down to your daughter. It's like you're generationally transforming your family's health.
Yeah.
That's very powerful.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I made the decision that I would do whatever I could to help my mom. And after I got out of school, it was like, if I can help one parent prevent, and one family prevent putting a parent in a nursing home prematurely, like, my mission would be accomplished. And I've been able to help thousands of people to reclaim their health and recharge their lives. So it feels like a really significant tribute to my mom's legacy and to her journey.
Amazing. Amazing. And if people want to get in touch with you, Jen, how can they do that?
Yeah, you can find me on social at Jen Beck Complete Health, or you can visit my website at CompleteHealthRevolution.com.
Great. I'll put those links. Thank you so much, Jen. Thank you so much for talking with me today. You're really inspirational.
Thank you, Netta. I love being a part of your podcast and the mission that you've created and how much you're helping people.
Thank you. Wow, that's a really fascinating story that Jen has, helping her mum who had multiple sclerosis, MS, and encouraging her daughter to enjoy healthy foods without even missing or needing the highly processed sugary foods. And it goes to show that we can be role models, not perfect, but role models, examples of living better and feeling better because we've cut down or cut out sugar. That's what Jen did, and that's what I teach inside of the Freedom from Cravings Formula program. In the program, you'll get step-by-step guidance and customized support through the 5-step formula that I've developed to help you get control over cravings so that you can finally live your life with more energy and fit into your favorite clothes effortlessly, and feel confident in your food choices so that you can ditch the shame and embarrassment that you feel every time your emotions make you slip or fall off the wagon, and so that you never feel like you're on some kind of restrictive diet. If you're at the stage of your life when you're finally ready to look after yourself, let's chat. You can talk directly to me on a free clarity call at any time by going to aftersugarclub.com and clicking on Program at the top. You'll also find the link with the show notes together with this episode. So go to aftersugarclub.com. Speak to you soon. That's it for this week. Keep in touch and see you soon for another episode.